Oh, Jason Priestley.
Oh, okay.
I think so. Oh, he's from
So
Vancouver. How cool.
closer, definitely
Yeah.
closer. Hello. Oh,
Hello.
hi. I
Hi.
think I caught you off guard.
I'm here. I'm ready.
Excellent. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm pretty good. We've definitely come into spring here in the UK, and we've had just a few days of sunshine, and it's just making my world so much brighter already. Better than I've been in a few weeks, that's for sure.
Amazing. We've had
Yeah.
the opposite experience where we're experiencing a cold snap after we had really warm weather for a while, and now this morning it
Mhm.
felt like -20, and it's cruel, and there's gonna be this, like, snowstorm and stuff overnight, and I'm not here for it. We were done. Like, I knew we weren't actually done, and it being 12 degrees, 15 degrees was the anomaly, and it wasn't gonna
Mhm.
last, but it was mean. It was a tease,
Yeah. Well, hey,
and
but that's the thing, eh? Like I remember growing up in Canada, the first day of spring was pretty much guaranteed a blizzard.
yeah. Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know how that happens, but it's yeah.
Yeah, and, you get your memories on your phone or on Facebook or whatever, and I was getting memories of being completely snowed into a basement apartment, and then I look outside and there's no snow on the ground, and we're going to the park in, like, a short sleeve. Like, "Well, this is not real right now." But that doesn't mean I'm not enjoying it, appreciating it. So, we are the Belladonna Watch Club. Come get cozy with us while we dig into iconic shows and movies that one of us has never seen before. I'm sure you've been along for the ride at this point, so you know that we are still doing Gilmore Girls, and obviously it's in the title, so let's just put that out there. So we're doing Gilmore Girls season 1, episode 15, Christopher Returns. I'm Lisa. I have seen the show.
And I'm Jenny, and I'm the fresh eyes.
Yes. So we left off last episode with a very forward cat call to Lorelai from a man on a bike, and it's Christopher. He's back. So this whole episode centers around what's going on with Christopher being around now. So Christopher is staying at the Gilmore house. He's going around town with Rory. They end up at Friday night dinner with Christopher's parents and Lorelai's parents. Everybody's there. And the whole episode is just about the dynamic of Christopher, the Haydens collectively, and the Gilmores collectively. So, what did you think?
I uh hmm. I knew you were going to ask me this because you ask me this every episode. And I've been trying to formulate a short answer as to how I feel about this episode. And I can't
We don't
really
need a
tell if I
short
like it.
answer.
Well, right.
We don't need
I
a short answer.
can't quite tell if I like it or not. I mean, I do, but it's annoying. But at the same time, it's a really neat exploration of maturity and complex feelings about the past and thinking about the future and roles. And so I think I liked it. I don't know. I think I liked it. I liked what they did with Christopher. I was afraid of what they were going to do with Christopher. And yeah, overall, I found it compelling.
Okay, all right. Well, let's dig into it then. So, we open right after basically where we left the last episode because they're back at the Gilmore house. They're at Lorelai and Rory's house, and Rory is making up the couch for Christopher, and she's so excited that he's here. She's talking about how good he looks and his hair is short and that maybe he's going to stay for a while. And Lorelai teases her like, yeah, I guess, we could weigh him down with all these blankets. Like, she's just so gung ho that he's there. And it's really sweet, but also kind of like really sad at the same time.
Yeah,
Having your dad around shouldn't feel this novel, you know?
yeah,
And
definitely, definitely. Rory is so hopeful.
yeah.
We find out a bit later that he has been calling them like once a week, or so it's not like he's totally non-contact, but to see him in person, that he has come to Stars Hollow for the first time, and she gets to experience time with her dad and all these new things in her life. There's so much hope, but Lorelai is cautious. She's not expecting much from him being here, and she's very rightfully hard to read because she's not even sure how to read herself. I personally had a real focus on Rory this whole episode, even though, well, even in the scenes that she's not physically present in, she's spoken about. So she is either
Yeah.
in or mentioned in every single scene. So even though the episode is not about her, it also is at the same time. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the coming back themes.
Yeah, and so kind of back to what you were saying, Lorelai is just extremely skeptical. She's trying to stay realistic. She's trying to keep Rory grounded, and because she sees that she's so excited. We do find out that Christopher is single, and we find out a little bit about kind of how he seems a bit aloof about this relationship because she's like, "Oh, I thought Diane was the one." And he's like, "More like the one to be gone by Memorial Day." Like how he can just like throw big statements around like, "She's the one," and then it being like, she's gone. That I
Hmm.
think they're like right off the bat kind of playing into his flightiness and his instability.
When he enters the scene, he's coming down the stairs, he's just taken a shower, and the first words out of his mouth are something like, "That was the worst shower I've ever taken." And it's like he's ready to go into fix it dad mode because he's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'll come back and I'll have a look at that later." I really like this choice that yeah, he comes in and he's like already really making himself at home. As if like, well, this is what dads do, and yeah, this is my place too. I can do these things for the girls. And then I want to point out a couple of things that aren't in the text of this scene, but choices like design choices. One of them is Christopher's shirt. His t-shirt is really really crinkly. So he's just got this gray t-shirt on that he put on after his shower, I guess, and it's really crinkly, which I think adds some verisimilitude, maybe. I don't know.
I'm sorry?
Actually, I think I'm actually using it wrong at the moment. But some realism, anyway, that it's really, really crinkly, which it would be if he's just like jammed it in his travel bag, right? So he's just like rolled it up and put it in his rucksack. And he's still a little bit wet because he's just had a shower. So all through the scene, he's still got some like wet on his neck, and he's got this crinkly shirt that he's traveling with. And so I really like that little detail. But
And just like
also,
sweatpants, I noticed it's just like he's
yeah,
extremely casual. That very much felt like how a person would come out of the shower.
yeah, yeah, totally. And then it wasn't until the second time I watched this episode that I realized I could see the effects of and hear a fireplace. So they have
Mm.
a fire going, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm noticing this and I'm picking up on it. For one, if a set were to have a fireplace going during a scene, that is a huge deal. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of care. That's a lot of like you need to pull out a lot of favors for it to allow a production to have a fireplace going. But we never actually see the fireplace lit. So instead, we have the effects of it. So we see the light effects on their faces, and then we hear the sounds in the background, which makes me think it was definitely a deliberate choice. It's probably like written into the script notes, like from the start, that like there's a fire going, it's cozy, it's like family intimate
Mhm.
time, and I love all of these elements that are bringing together this like cozy, warm, happy family vibe, which is like it's trying to tell us that straight off the bat, but it's not. It's obviously not how it's going. But there's just like so much with the light and with the sound effects and just the details just in this opening scene. We haven't even had the credits yet. It's just this opening scene. Oh, they're working with everything they possibly can in this episode. Really, really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. It actually kind of bothered me that Christopher wanted to fix the shower, because it's like, that is very presumptuous of you. Like, that is just you don't
Mhm.
just, like, come in and say that you're gonna, like, make all these changes in somebody's house. Like, he is deliberately inserting himself into their lives and being like, "Look how useful I am, and you wanna have me around, and, like, this is who I am now."
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
Lorelai was like, "Hey, keep your hands off my shower." Like, she just was like, "No, no, no." Because you know that that's what he's trying to do. Like, it just
Mhm.
feels so forced
Well, this is
because
it.
it's
Is
like
that
they were
he?
doing just fine with their crappy shower. Go away.
Yeah. Well, and he has ideas of solutions and how things might be fixed and how he can make things better without actually thinking them through. He just has like this vision of yeah how he can fix things. What solutions can he bring, but not actually implementing them.
Off Rory goes to study, And Christopher's like, "It's Friday night. What are you doing?" She says, "I like to get my homework done Friday and Saturday so I could do my extra credit work on Sunday." And then she just like prances off like she didn't say something ludicrous for a 16-year-old girl. So then Christopher's like, "She does not get that from me. Like, I do not know what that's about." But then with Rory gone, Lorelai has her chance to be like, "Real talk, what are you doing here?" Like, she does
Mhm.
not mince words. She goes straight to the point. And Christopher, he starts saying how, like, his life is getting back on track. His business is going great. He has an accountant. And he says all these things like he's trying to, like, butter her up and impress her. And there's, like, all this sweet talk about how amazing Lorelai is and how what a great job that she's done and like all of this stuff. And Lorelai's just like cutting through it. She's like, I don't care. Like, tell me what's going on.
Mhm.
Eventually, he says that he wants to be part of Rory's life and he wants to be more present. And Lorelai reminds him that she has always left the door open for him. He's never taken it, and that, it's still open if that's what he wants, but like do it, basically, because you haven't been. So then in comes Rory to invite Christopher to a softball game the next morning. And it is just like, pause the tape. Softball? You play softball? And then everybody has a laugh about that because that's not it. But then Christopher finds out about Dean because it's Dean's softball game. And once
My
again,
friend Dean.
oh, yes, she did say my friend, which
Mhm.
I also picked up on. Like, okay. And then Christopher again goes into kind of like dad mode, being like, she has a Dean, I need a beer. Like, first of all, if they talk every week, why hasn't Dean been brought up yet? Like, they've been dating now for over 2 months.
Mhm.
So that's weird. I suppose it would be weird no matter what to have your 16-year-old dating somebody, but like the first time, it'd be like, oh, they have a partner. Okay.
Yeah.
Christopher says, yeah, I'll go to the game, whatever. That sounds great. And then they kind of wrap up the scene with Lorelai softening a little bit, saying, there's more than just an earlobe in common with you guys, and the door is always open for you and Rory.
Yeah. They're both of them, Rory and Lorelai, being so open, welcoming. Rory openly invites him to be part of her life the next day, the very next day. So he is such a lucky man right now to be welcomed like this. Yeah, when she said that you have more than just an earlobe in common, it struck me that he really does look like he could be Rory's dad. Like a
Totally.
young dad, a young dad, but the match there is insane. They
Yeah.
look so alike. And I really like how genuinely impressed he is with Rory. And he rightfully says, none of that is is from me. Like all that's all on you and on Rory herself. But it's really nice to see somebody admire Rory in this kind of way.
Yeah, so like he seems to be there with the best of intentions to spend time with Rory and all of that. And it's good for her to spend time with her dad. And you just know from like Lorelai's skepticism that we're kind of on thin ice still. Like that we're not, it's a little bit shaky. Like, okay, he's here, but Lorelai is not on board, not fully on board. So at this point, we're like, okay. So, cut to next morning, it's the softball game. We have Luke and Dean on opposite teams. They are chirping each other in like a very, sportsman, kind of way. But then you have Kirk in the stands who's not chirping, he's full on heckling. He is like harassing them. It is not even like funny or it's not banter. It's just like he's accosting them.
It's so good. It's so good because he's like, from that distance, he's safe. He's on the bleachers. He's just shouting. He's having a grand old time. Like, he seems so comfortable in what he's doing. And it's not until later when he really pisses off Luke and Luke leaves leaves the diamond to chase after him or just, get him out,
Yeah.
that he actually frantically runs away. But this is very fun.
Yeah, he seems, like, genuinely mad at them. I'm like, "What
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of shouting is this? Like, why is he so angry with them?"
I don't know. I
It's
don't
ridiculous. So, yeah,
know.
Luke, like, he's had enough, like, throws down his mitt. "Alright, that's it." And then Kirk is like, "Whoop, bye," and runs away, as he should. And we find out that basically they're all terrible at softball and that they play until someone hits a home run or like gets a point, and then they call it at that point.
Yeah.
Lorelai's not at the game. It's just Rory and Christopher. Dean comes over, meets him. They talk about bikes for a minute, and then it kind of triggered a thought for me because Dean said that he has a 1986 Suzuki. So does he work on his motorcycle with Todd?
Oh,
His
probably.
bike. Yeah. I was picturing them
Yeah.
working on their, like, bicycles. But
Oh, no, no,
now
no.
okay, because
No.
that's why I was talking about that he was like a BMX kid, because they're working on their bikes together, like, in my head. But now I understand that he meant they work on their motorcycles together.
I think a BMX would still be realistic, but yeah, motorcycle doesn't seem too out of the realm of possibility. So yeah, I guess so.
I have no other notes about the softball game. Do you have
Well,
anything to add?
yeah, well, I just like that while the heckling from Kirk is going on, that's when we get so obviously his whole heckling thing is not relevant to the story. It's kind of it's not important, but we see what's important. So we see the acting from Rory and Chris and Dean, who's out on the pitch, right? So Dean gets this face of like, who is this like fairly attractive man sitting next to Rory? What is going on? What's happening here? And then Luke as well. Luke notices is that, oh, okay, Rory's here with some guy. But they don't address it. They don't talk about it. But we have the like just the noticing and the
Mhm.
exchange, just a visual exchange, little wave and a hi and a something. That's the important stuff. But that's all happening outside of the spoken text. And I think I just like seeing scenes like that.
Yeah, it was really well done. Like, we need to know that Luke knows that someone is here.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
yeah, that was definitely the point of the scene.
I also want to point out the weather in this
Oh,
episode.
pouring rain.
We have so many different types of weather in this episode, and I think they do a really great job of incorporating, or well, just sort of playing with. I'm assuming unpredictable weather, but they use it really, really well, especially in the final scene, which we'll get to. Of yeah, using the outdoor experience to sort of add to the scene. But yeah, in this scene in particular, it's chucking it down and it's like misty. We can barely even see anything. I think we can even hear that the rain is coming down. And I'm just imagining this like heavy duty tarp, like all above everyone's heads, and people going around with like umbrellas, like walking people to the set under umbrellas and just like tuck them under there. And how did they mic that scene? Like,
But
it's
also
insane.
no one looks wet.
No, no, no.
And so I'm like, is it actually raining or did they just add that? Like the
No,
fire
I think it's definitely raining. I think it's
I
definitely
don't know,
actually
no
raining.
one's wet. Nobody is wet.
Don't know.
I'm gonna go back and watch that because I was paying attention and I'm like, but I'm expecting like Dean's shirt to have like marks on it from the rain, like he was just standing out.
Uh-huh.
Nothing. Dry as bone. I don't know. Maybe they just want to add some more like realism, like you said, to certain scenes. Like it's not always super sunny and beautiful outside. So I don't know. It cuts to, I guess, in the meantime, Lorelai is at work. Guess Saturday morning. It's a hotel. You got to go to work sometimes on the weekend. And she walks into the kitchen where Suki and Michelle are giggling like a couple of schoolgirls. We don't know what they're talking about. We never find out what was so entertaining, and I hate that.
I
I
know. I
need to
wanted
know.
to know what were they laughing about? It must have been something, some kind of like dark humor somehow. I
Yeah,
get the impression that it was some kind of like biting something or other. And this is
yeah, something
again
shady.
the acting here. The laughing is so hard to do it convincingly. It's so
Mhm.
hard. And I think they do such a great job with it. Like it actually looks like it was a mistake. And they've like walked in and they're actually just like falling apart to pieces. Maybe they weren't supposed to be laughing, but really good. Really good.
Yeah. And then the like transition where they're like still laughing, but then kind of shifting how they're feeling about it because Lorelai points out, like, oh my God, you guys are having a nice moment together. That's never happened before. And she should have just zipped it
Yeah.
because then the whole situation just devolves
Yeah.
very quickly because it's like,
Suki
oh,
calls him
well, if you
caustic.
yeah, she's like, well, if you weren't so caustic all the time, and it just go, they start suddenly going back and forth, and then they're angry with each other again, and Michelle storms off.
Back to the norm.
Like, oop, that was short and sweet, and never gonna happen again. Thank you, Lorelai. for breaking that down for us. So Suki just wants the tea. She's like, "What is happening at home? Tell me about the man. How are you feeling? Give me the details." And Lorelai is being very guarded. She's like, "Oh, there's fewer clean towels at home." Suki's like, "That's not what I wanted. That is not what I asked about. Like, tell me how you're feeling about all of this." And Lorelai's having a hard time putting it into words because she doesn't know how she's feeling. And it always goes back to, but it's Christopher. She's like,
Mhm.
he's Rory's dad and he's unreliable and he is never going to get his life together, but it's Christopher.
Yeah, I think one of her last lines of it is, and then he smiles.
Mhm.
So, because I up to this point, we don't actually know how she has continued to feel about him. There's so much that's still unknown, and me as the first time watcher, I have a lot of questions that even through this episode, like how did he leave off with her parents? How are his parents simply involved in this, or are they? How often does he contact them or Rory? Where is he? And yeah, and how did they leave off? Like, did they have some big, scary, dramatic breakup? I don't know. And when Lorelai got pregnant, what the heck happened at home? We know she left, but like, what? And these questions do get answered through the episode.
Yep.
But it's
Yes.
yeah, we finally find out in this scene how Lorelai is taking it, and it's still sort of undecided.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah. She wants it for Rory, and she says as much. She's like, Rory needs her dad, and she's so happy that he's here, but she doesn't necessarily want him in their lives in a romantic way just because of all of the history and knowing him so well, but that doesn't mean she doesn't care for him. And so that is confusing her because she's like, it's Christopher. Like,
yeah,
they
definitely like
have such a
somebody.
deep past.
Yeah, someone who you cared so much about at such an eventful time of your life, and still, it's not like she's completely cut him out. He's still involved in some kind of way. Of course, you're going to continue feelings. You don't just stop having feelings for people. It doesn't happen that way. There's going to be something that lingers, and very tough call.
Yeah.
Sophie is really good in this scene. I think I really like her in it.
Yeah, she doesn't really try to sway Lorelai in one way or another. She sort of just lets her try to muddle through her own confusion. So post softball game, we have Christopher and Rory walking around the town. They walk by Al's Pancake World, and we discover Al does not make pancakes, but he bought too many branded napkins and had to keep the name. He does fusion cuisine, and recently they went to Paraguay.
These kind of details just make a show so addictive.
Yeah.
You sort of you're waiting for what's the next little weird quirk gonna be, and it's great.
Yeah, I absolutely love the show for this kind of stuff. And then Miss Patty goes right in for the kill. I have a clip here of Miss Patty. She is iconic. I love.
Your dad.
Nice to meet you.
You're Rory's father. Well, well, well. You know, Christopher, we're all like Rory's parents around here, and I'm one of her mothers. And since you're her father, well, that would make us a couple. Couple of what? I don't know.
Okay, well, we gotta be going.
Yes.
I love it.
And then she
I
proceeds
love
to say,
it.
"Come on back and see me." Like,
Of course, she is incorrigible, and she. I just love I love how much she just sort of exists in this like fantasy type experience in the real world. She has a fantasy application in the real world, and she just has the guts and gusto to say whatever she wants to say, and then she plays it in this great little. She adds in this playful joke of a couple of what I don't know. That's my favorite. That's my favorite part of it. And like, oh geez, I love meeting women like that. I've definitely met women like that in my lifetime who just have this outlandish humor, and you can tell that it's done for their own enjoyment. And
yeah.
I look up to them. Fantastic.
Yeah, when she says, like, a couple of one, I don't know. This is the point where everybody's like, "Okay, Patty," and she's
Yeah.
just, like, living for herself. Like, she
That's it. That's it. Yeah. She's so inspiring.
she's amazing. Yeah, and she's just, like, unapologetic. She does not
Mhm.
care. She's just like,
Mhm.
This is a tasty snack that I'm gonna come gobble up, and I know, like, I'm not actually trying to get him, but I'm gonna let him know what I'm
Yeah.
thinking." I love it. I adore
Ugh,
her.
what a babe.
And then they walk away and immediately, like, vibe change. She pulls out the phone and starts calling people to be like, I just met Rory's dad. Rory's dad is here. And the rumor mill just like ping, 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 ping. I don't know if it's like a party line or something, but everybody knows. Everybody knows. They make it like across the street. And Taylor Dozy is like, so you're Rory's dad. And they're like, okay. News spreads fast in this town. And she's like, oh, yes. Oh, yes. And then they head to the bookstore, and Jackson is there with, we learn camera guy's name is Andrew. I had forgotten that his name is Andrew. So the guy that like busts into Luke's in the last episode
Oh,
is
it's
the
the
guy
same
working at
guy.
the bookshop.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah, same guy. So Andrew is working at the bookshop, and Jackson is there. And they're like, oh, hey, Christopher, like super chummy, like they've always known him. And they're like, they got your description wrong. I don't know. Do you think he's more of a George Clooney or a Brad Pitt? And then Andrew says Billy Crudup, who I had never heard of before.
I've heard of him, but I cannot picture. I imagine he's somebody who was like on people's bedroom walls in, ripped out of
You know,
magazines and stuff. But
I looked him up, and I don't think so. I,
no.
I wouldn't call Christopher either a Clooney or a Pitt personally.
No.
I don't know who I would compare him to.
Hang on, give me a second. He looks like, to me, he looks more like one of the guys from Beverly Hills 90210.
Okay.
And I can't remember this guy's name. I want to look him up. Oh, Jason Priestley.
Oh,
Jason
he's
Priestley.
more of a Jason Priestley. Okay.
I think so. Oh, he's from Vancouver. How cool. I didn't know
Billy
that.
Crudup is like this kind of guy. I could see Jason
Priestley?
Priestley a little bit more. Closer. Definitely
Yeah.
closer. Come on, Andrew
Right.
and Jackson. Where are your like heartthrob actor? Like,
Yeah,
where's your
come on,
roster
man.
at? So they get into the store, and Christopher offers to buy Rory anything that she wants. Well, first, no, he doesn't say that. He says, what book are you absolutely like coveting right now? What are you super dreaming about? And she says, the compact Oxford English Dictionary. He just, without even thinking, I'd like to buy one, please. And Rory protests, saying it's very expensive. Like, you can't. Like, it's hundreds of dollars, which I looked it up right now. It's $435 for this dictionary. So back in 2000, it was probably not that. It was probably like 200 something, but still pretty expensive for a book.
Mhm.
And then he goes to pay for the book, and his card is declined. And Andrew asks if he wants to run the card through again. And immediately Rory is like, yes. Excuse me, it's not your card, it's not your money. You can't just be like, yeah, it's fine. Like, you do that. That was such a weird choice for me. You don't step in on somebody's credit card transaction. Like, it just was like a weird choice for her, especially having been like, you can't buy me that. And then 5 seconds later, yes, keep trying the card. Like, do it. It's just such a weird choice. They leave the bookstore without the book because Christopher is like, no, can you hold it for me? I'm going to come back with another card tomorrow. And they go outside, and Jackson is basically like up on a soapbox talking about Christopher. He has a crowd of people, and he's like, yeah, it's her real dad. And he's like going on and on and on. And then he says that he's very friendly and obviously has money because he's got that like money nose. Like, what is a money nose? What is a rich person nose? I don't have that. I don't
I
know
sure
what that
don't.
is. So that's that. I was wondering.
I don't know. I don't want to think anything ill of Jackson or of color of Jackson, and I'm assuming he doesn't actually mean for it to be at all rude. But I don't know if there might be
it
a
could be
link to
kind of
like a Jewish nose.
Yeah. Oh
Something like
no.
that?
I hope that it
Really
wasn't
hope not?
that. I
I
hadn't.
don't know.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I am so naive that I didn't even consider that. Yikes. If that's what it is, yikes. Yikes,
Yeah.
Jackson.
Sign of the
Maybe there's something
times.
else. Maybe there's just like some people who had lots of money and their lineage has a very prominent
That's entirely
note.
possible. Maybe he's got like a
I don't
royal
know.
nose, but
That's
yeah.
it.
So
Hopefully he's not anti-Semitic. Or yes. Moving right along.
he is. Well, the best thing
Uh,
about it is that he gets humiliated, and just like Kirk
yes.
did in a previous scene, he goes running off, flailing, running away. And
Yes.
and
That was
embarrassed.
quite the
So
run he did. That was unique. Yeah.
when he leaves, we see just this group that he was talking to, and there's like 5 or 6 people there, faces that I don't think we've seen before, or if we have, they've been elsewhere. And it just made me. I wrote down Christopher hasn't come to Stars Hollow. Stars Hollow has engulfed him. Like every turn he goes to, somebody already knows him. Somebody already has an opinion about him. And like I wonder what kind of anonymity he might have had in California. I think he was living in
Oh
California.
yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure he enjoyed that. But like when you come back to a small town, like they don't know his whole backstory. They just know, oh, it's Rory's dad, but they don't know about the stuff with the Gilmores. They don't know how Lorelai feels about him. It doesn't matter. That's not important right now. They're just like, ooh, new exciting,
Something to
interesting
talk about.
man.
Yeah. He's a shiny
He's
new
probably
penny and they
safer.
all want to see.
Yeah. He's probably safer being an outsider for sure.
Something that I do like that he said was after they had the conversation in the bookstore with Jackson and Andrew about what celebrity he looks like, Christopher turns to Rory and is like, I'm kidnapping you and I'm getting you out of here. Like everybody here is crazy.
Yeah.
Which is fair because he's now been accosted 3 times at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Totally fair.
The stuff about his card declining, and he instructs Rory, don't tell your mom about this. Right off the hop, we have a problem where, keeping something quiet from one parent versus another. Don't put her in that position. Don't make her do that. Really, really shitty thing to do. I don't like that.
And she's so eager to please him because she's so happy that he's there and she wants to do anything in her power to like keep him and like help him to make him stay. That it's not a good look for him at all with this situation. And especially because they're besties. And something that he actually said in the beginning scene when they're talking about him being around more is he says that maybe Rory needs another pal. No, she doesn't need a pal. She needs a dad. That line bothered me so much. And that I'm certain fully intentional to reiterate how non-family oriented he is. Like he just doesn't understand what being around and being a dad actually means. It's not just taking her out to buy a book. It's actually having to parent her. She doesn't need a pal. She needs a dad. And this is just another way of him just not understanding what an actual family dynamic should be. And it does not include keeping secrets from the other parent ever. So meanwhile, Lorelai is at Luke's waiting for them to arrive. And Luke takes this opportunity to say, hey, who was that at the game with Rory? At first, he's like, I saw her with some guy. And Lorelai's like, obviously that was Dean. And he's like, no, I know that punk. The other guy.
That punk. I love this because when we saw them playing softball together, it occurred to me I wonder what his opinion of Dean is now. Because the last time we heard, he's like, that guy's bad news. Bad news. Straight up. Absolutely no. But they're simple enough. They'll play softball together. They still haven't really interacted much at all. And then he calls him that punk. And it's just so good. Oh dear. So it has not really improved all that much.
No. And I think it's like you said, it's like a civil, friendly enough. Like it's not like, oh, I don't like that guy. I don't want to play baseball with him ever, but they can be around, but they can still be like, oh, that old curmudgeon. Oh, that punk.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So Luke finds out that it was Rory's dad. And then this charming scene ensues. So
I was hoping you would use this one.
Oh, I have the whole
Rory
scene.
was at the game today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was with some guy.
Dean.
No, I know that punk. Some older guy.
Oh, that would have been her dad.
Really? So that's...
The guy who impregnated me with Rory. Yes.
Oh, well, he did a good job.
Impregnating me with Rory?
Now, this is taking a very weird turn.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I'm out. That's enough for me.
That's so good.
Like, what
Oh,
did he
man.
even mean by that? Like,
No.
what were you trying to say? Like, he's got good genes, like, or what? Luke. Yeah, I think he just felt like he had to like comment on something.
Yeah.
And then he was just like, oh, nope, that wasn't it.
Well, like
No.
so many times before, he's tried to imply one thing, but has not quite said it in the right way. But yeah, when he stumbles, he does it in a very, very Luke way.
Yes.
And we can see in these shots that the diner has not been painted yet.
No, that's it. So I wrote down, we can see it needs paint. So now we're getting actually a better idea in this episode that the paint needs a little bit of fixing. In the last episode, when they were actually talking about painting, we didn't see it quite as much, but here it's more deliberate. At this point, the first time I rewatched the episode, I'd forgotten all about the painting. Completely forgotten about the painting. It was only in my second rewatch that I noticed the walls and stuff. So then Rory and Christopher arrive, they sit down, and Christopher's phone rings. And Lorelai tries to be like, points to the sign, no cell phones, and Christopher just disregards it.
I gasped loudly.
Right?
How dare you?
Like, you can't just like come to a town where there's these rules and there's a sign and there's somebody telling you this is a rule, and he's just like, whatever, I'm a bigwig from California, I'm gonna answer my phone. Like, jerk. Huge jerk.
So mean.
And then, surprise, who's on the phone?
Emily!
Emily.
It's your mother.
Hi, Grandma.
Uh-huh. Well, actually, I'm sitting here with your girls. Sure. She wants to speak to you.
Hi, Mom.
Lorelai, Christopher is in town.
Oh, what? I didn't know.
She's so excited and happy. Christopher's in town. Like, girl,
No.
you called her. You called him. And now I'm talking to him. Like, it was amazing. I laugh out loud at that part every single time. Such a mom thing to do.
Emily looks beautiful in this scene. She doesn't have the same look for the rest of the episode, but she looks so good. The colors on her and her makeup and her hair is styled a bit differently, a little bit smoother.
And the lighting.
Oh, she looks so good. Yeah, and the lighting. Oh, she looks so good. And this is the first, well, one of the first moments where Rory's hi grandma goes sort of ignored or unheard. And it happens again at the start of the next scene. Rory is so actively trying to invite people into her life. And so even in these scenes where she's not even really there, she still really is.
Right.
So she's either spoken about or she's, the main focus of the scene. But in this, she's not. But even so, the hi grandma, she's there. She's trying to put herself in. But going by the lines that follow that, I don't think Emily heard her.
No, probably
just,
not.
Right into the conversation. It just makes my heart break for her over and over and over again.
Yeah, because she basically spends the entire episode trying to be closer to people who aren't able to be there for her in the way that she needs them to be. Just going back to Emily for a second, probably one of the other reasons that she looks amazing here is because she's smiling, which
That
we
too.
don't see very often. We
Yes.
don't get a lot of like happy Emily. We get stern Emily, we get angry Emily, we get frustrated, annoyed, like all of these other neutral to like negative emotions from Emily. And here she's just like ravishing. She's so excited, radiant. And she's so excited because Christopher's here and she's planned Friday night dinner for the Haydens and the Gilmores to all eat together without consulting anybody if they're okay with this. She is just like, I had the most wonderful idea. And then so I just did it. Like, sometimes when someone has an idea, they discuss it with the people involved.
Yes.
But she's like, they're all in town. We're just going to do it. And then Rory ends up being like, whoa, they're my other grandparents. I don't know them. I haven't seen them since I was a baby. Like, this is weird. And it's terrible also that her other grandparents were not involved at all and didn't even try to be involved at all. Like, I know that Lorelai up and left, but if Christopher can be a part of Rory's life, so can his parents.
Yes,
Even
I
if it's a
agree.
phone call, even if it's a
Yes.
card, something. It's their grandchild.
I don't
End of
even
story.
think she recognizes them by name because they
No.
mention them by name, Francine and Strobe.
Strobe. Right?
What
I
is
wrote,
that?
what kind of a name is Strobe?
I've never heard that name in my life.
I looked it up. It is Germanic in origin.
Okay.
It could either mean the one with the bushy or bristly hair, or it can mean rough or unkempt. Those are what it derived from.
So
he is rough
typically
and has bristly hair. So
yes, a
I'm
prickly
on board.
person.
And I suppose Hayden could be German
Probably.
as well. Yeah, so they could
He was
be
a composer,
German.
I think. Haydn.
Oh,
I don't
Haydn?
know. I'm not sure.
Handel? There's a different one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're left feeling a little bit uneasy about this dinner because everybody is uneasy. Christopher is not comfortable. Lorelai is not comfortable. Rory is not comfortable. Nobody is excited about this except Emily. Cut to Friday night dinner. We have Lorelai and Christopher standing at the forefront in front of the door at the Gilmores house. And then we have Rory standing kind of like behind and between them, but they're the focus here. And Lorelai's like, I have to see my parents. Christopher's like, I have to see my parents. And they're being so dramatic. And Rory's like, ladies and gentlemen, the drama king and queen of Connecticut. Like, this is being so dramatic. Poor Rory. Little does she know, I think they are understating
Yeah.
what this dinner is going to be.
Yep.
And then there's this really weird shot of Lorelai putting the key in the door, and it's just like so pointed, and it felt so weird. It felt like she was like a burglar because she's wearing her gloves, and it felt like it was like a clue where somebody had to like sneak into a room and do something. It was just so weird, and I know it's to set up the next scene where Emily's all confused about why they let themselves into the house because they didn't hear the doorbell and whatever. But it was just, they don't do scenes like that. It was just
No.
so weird. It felt like they were about to be robbed. Like that's somebody coming in the back and not wanting to leave fingerprints. Like,
I wonder if there's meant to be some kind of a like unlocking because they sort of walk into the past almost when they walk into this next scene.
like, you know what it felt like? It felt like when in The Sims, the music would change because there's a burglar on your lot. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God, where is he? Like, it felt like that music needed to be overlaid in this scene. It was just like, ding. Yeah, that's how it felt. Very much that. Yes. I'm very much like in a Sims phase of my life again right now. It's just, yes. So they go inside. Lorelai lets them all in with the key. She and Emily have this back and forth being like, the key was for emergencies. You can't just let yourself in. She's like, oh, I'm not even going to say the word, but like, not a criminal among us. Like, and it's like, whatever, it's your parents' house. Just let them walk in. But Emily and propriety and rules and the way things are done. But she's just so excited that Christopher is there that she actually pretty much glosses over it. Which I feel like any other Friday night, it would have been something that she harps on repeatedly for a long amount of time. But
Yes.
Christopher actually helps distract from the faux pas of using the key. And they go in, and Richard's made martinis. He's all excited. Everybody's all excited. And they are like doting on Christopher, and it's like they are laying it on so thick, and it's almost like sickly. They are fawning over him and just talking about how he's got a splash of greatness, and he's always had a splash of greatness. And my mother would say, you've got a splash of greatness, and you're such a talented man, and your business is, I'm so happy you've got such a talent for business. And like, they are gushing, and it's awkward.
It really, really is. I do like the framing of these scenes though, or of this scene of going into the sitting room. I don't know. Because while this is all happening, we get like center of the shot is this portrait family photo thing of Emily and Richard and presumably young Lorelai right above the fireplace, I suppose. above the mantelpiece, and it's right there, and it's like we have just walked into him. Like it feels like we've sort of jumped back in time, and it's there being introduced to the new boyfriend, and maybe how it should have gone. That like, oh, they really they're so impressed by him, and what a great choice for our daughter, and here's our daughter presented in our trio family photo, and it feels like we've jumped back in time, even though Rory is there, but Rory basically goes ignored because again, in this scene, she's just done another "Hi, Grandma" and gets ignored or unheard, and she's just kind of there as like a little tag along, and she's so out of place.
Yeah, and they won't leave it alone, and Lorelai's like, "I wouldn't mind another splash of greatness if you don't mind," and, like, goes for another martini because she's had enough. She's like, "This is ridiculous."
Already.
And Emily says the weirdest thing. She goes, "Well, I know one thing for certain. Rory, like, inherited his musical talent," or something to that effect. And Lorelai is like, "Excuse me? Like, neither of them have any musical talent. What are you talking about?" Like, it was so weird. And then she says that, "I know this for certain." When have we ever heard Rory do anything musical? Like,
No idea. Where did that come from?
she's so
What-
desperate to find more things to compliment him on
Probably.
that
Yeah.
it just is like, "What are you talking about?" And then they start talking about how, he knows a little bit of guitar, and then we get this.
I'm a Chuck Berry man myself. Something wrong?
I would never have guessed that last sentence would ever come out of your mouth.
And why not?
Chuck Berry?
Yes, Chuck Berry. He was all the rage when I was in school.
So we're talking pre my Ding-a-ling?
I believe I am.
Yep.
So obviously he's thinking Johnny Be Good. He's thinking back, the 50s, not early 70s when, yeah, my Ding-a-ling, which I used to sing with my sister all the time. All the time. It was one of those songs that just came on, and like when we were young, like it was about a toy. He talks about a toy in the song.
Yeah, of course.
Like the things that our parents let us sing is very, very questionable.
I told you yesterday that Chuck Berry is one of my problematic faves. I love his music and what he inspired in rock and roll and musicians from then on. He was so spectacular. Problematic, of course, but I just loved how adamant Richard was about being a Chuck Berry man. Like, yes, of course. Just don't
like,
speak
why?
ill of my fave. And this starts off the mention of so many bands and artists in this episode alone.
Oh yeah.
They've already talked about "Smoke on the Water" by Deep Purple, and then they'll talk about Metallica later on, and just all of this music talk, which in this episode I think is an indicator of naivety, not so much innocence, but youth and just a teenageriness. Anytime Lorelai talks about it and they have an argument over music, she sounds more like Lane, who is 16 and a teenager and obsessed with music. That's her thing. Lane is allowed to be like that. Lorelai turns into Lane as soon as music comes up, and she uses it as such a common thing to do, actually, to use music as a basis for being a match with somebody or using someone's musical taste to determine their personality. It's a very flawed thing to do. Obviously, don't do that. But it's such an easy thing to do, of like, oh, he knows this band, this obscure band that I love, so obviously we're meant to be. Or like, he likes this and this band when I can't stand that style of music, so obviously we are incompatible, just total contrasting personalities, and just making decisions about someone based on their musical taste. It's obviously not a credible thing to do, but it's such a thing that like people definitely do that all the time.
All the time, for sure.
All the time.
Yeah. Well, because sometimes people's musical taste also kind of like leaches into their preferences and their personality in terms of other aspects. So if it's just like, yeah, I like this song, that's great, it's one thing. But a lot of times it's like, if you really like a certain type of music, then it becomes a lot of kind of who you are. But it's also important to me to be able to share music with somebody. And
Oh,
so to be able
definitely.
to go to shows together and experience that joy because music is such like a bonding experience. So there needs to be a little bit of musical compatibility for me, but I wouldn't base like my whole opinion on it. Like
No.
my husband likes a fair amount of music that I'm not terribly interested in, but we do have common ground, and that's very important to me anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. It's the your taste in music, whether you play it or even if you listen to it, whatever, is such an expression of your own feelings and your personality and your connection to emotions often. But it's here Lorelai almost uses musical disagreements or incompatibilities as a cover for actual under the
Yeah.
surface
Yes.
incompatibilities.
Yeah.
But she goes,
Not in this scene. We're not quite there yet.
no.
But yes, in this
Right.
episode,
Mhm.
yes. It becomes like a weird like point, like case in point kind of thing
Yeah.
where it just like doesn't apply really at all. I love this scene because I want to imagine like Richard listening to my ding-a-ling and just like not cluing in, and then just like as he's like going about his day, like my ding-a-ling, like just this like
Mhm.
proper man, and then being like, yeah, Chuck Berry, very good stuff. Yes. I love it.
I hope so.
Yeah. And then even after this, Emily recounts this performance that they did when they were 10. So Chris and Lorelai, of a song from Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. And again, Richard is like, "Did you write that?" It's like, "No, no, Dad, it's from a famous musical. Like, why do you think he did everything? He didn't walk on water. Like, he isn't,
Mhm.
he is not a saint. He didn't do everything that is good ever. Like, relax, Richard."
Mhm. Mhm. Ease off.
And then the doorbell rings, and Lorelai goes, "Haha, your turn."
And then this is when Rory rightly asks how she should be. How should she address them? You know, she wants to be prepared to not make any mistakes in the upcoming scene, the next bit. How should I address them? Should I call them by name, grandma and like what do I do? Help me. And she doesn't really get an answer. It's just a sort of,
No.
well,
She's like,
I
"Just
don't know. And
don't.
she's
Just don't."
she, just don't even refer to them. But she obviously wants to, and she wants to do it right.
I wouldn't have known what to tell her either, because you can't really call them grandma and grandpa, but you can't call them Strobe and Francine, and you can't call them Mr. and Mrs. Hayden. Like, it's all of it feels wrong on every level.
Yeah.
So, I understand why she didn't get the answers that she was looking for, because until you actually get to know them, there's no answer
Mhm.
that feels appropriate. So Christopher starts kind of like freaking out a little bit. He's like, he's loosening his tie. He's just like feeling a bit flustered. And like, you feel like he's going to be like he's being over the top and he's being dramatic. Like sometimes when Lorelai's talking about her parents, you feel like sometimes she's being a little bit over the top and embellishing. But no, they're awful. They're awful.
They are horrific. Yeah.
And so they come in and they're introducing one another and they're saying hello and stuff. And Lorelai's making some jokes. And Strobe says, "I see you haven't changed, Lorelai," with the utmost contempt. He says it with so much disdain, like it's a terrible thing that she hasn't changed. And so immediately we're like, uh-oh, we're in for a ride. Like this is gonna suck. And Rory curtsies. Bless her. She just is so out of sorts and doesn't know what to do, and she's not getting any moral support.
Nothing. And like I don't blame her. It's so awkward. Like she shakes, puts the hand out, and she's just and it must feel like that I am meeting these people who are obviously like, extremely important, that like they're almost, well, they've been revered, you know. Richard and Emily have spoken about them almost like we are welcoming royalty, or we're welcoming like the president. Speaking of presidents,
We'll get there.
or mentioning of a president a little bit later on in the scene. But yeah, bless her. It's so awkward. What do you do? And she's trying so hard to just do the right thing. Like the look on her face, she is the wateriest and flimsiest we've seen her ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lorelai's like, "Did you just curtsy?" And she's like, "Stop it." She's
Yeah.
like, "Lady."
Oh God. It's funny, but it's also like, Lorelai, shut up. Come on. She is,
Yeah,
you should know that she is struggling right now.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. But they're all struggling. I think everybody's just so nervous and in their own heads. Everybody except Emily and Richard, who are so excited. But the other three are nervous because they're not so
But even like
short-sighted.
except that Lorelai has already had a martini, and she's on to her second one now, and she is very loosey goosey. She's getting very loosey goosey in this scene. This is her like preparedness for this meeting, I think.
Yeah. Immediately they start talking up Rory. So Emily and Richard are talking about how, oh, this is Rory and she's so intelligent and she could give you a run for your money, Strobe. And it's so uncomfortable because they put her on the spot to say something clever. And everybody's staring at her, this poor girl, and she says nothing. She's like
on the verge of tears.
Yeah, it's horrible that these adults are treating her like a trophy and putting her on display. And like it's the most inauthentic type of way to get to know somebody. It was awful. And then Strobe says, I guess my money is safe then. Like, so rude.
Skin crawl.
Rude. Like, what was that? And
this is your granddaughter.
Right? And so he's like,
she's
how
not
old
some
are you,
like
young lady? And she says, I'm 16. And he goes, 16 is a dangerous age for a girl. Like, ew, stop thinking about your granddaughter going out and sleeping with people. Like, ew, stop. You're disgusting. Like, this is an infuriating man.
Mm-hmm.
And Rory is just like so under the gun. And Lorelai, like you said, couple drinks in, desperate to deflect, to change the subject, to bring it anywhere but here, just goes, I hate President Bush. She just like blurts it out. And that just is like, oh, the gasp, shock and horror. And everybody's just like, Lorelai, what is like, and then Strobe takes it so personally. Like, what? Like, what do you have against successful businessmen? Like, he's like, this is the leader of our country, young lady. Also, young lady. He's totally just like diminishing and all of it. It just, she's trying to deflect, but went way too far in the other direction.
I like that one of her criticisms of him is like, his face is too small for his head. And then Francine is still so like collected, and she goes, what kind of a thing is that to say?
Yeah. She's like, I don't understand why that's like a comment that anyone would make. Like,
so funny. She's kind of cool because she is the ever so slightly more like approachable, and I hesitate to use the word approachable, but she isn't so as like driving and like bomb explosion as Strobe is, but she's still so funny. How unusual. And now you know that she's going to be contemplating that and like, his face really is too small for his head. Like later in the evening.
Like, damn that Lorelai Gilmore.
Exactly.
And so this just like opens up the floodgates of just attacking Lorelai and attacking the Gilmores and everything that happened. Like, obviously the Haydens are still very damaged and bitter and have terrible resentment about everything that happened. Yeah. Probably because they don't have access to the joy that is Rory and the wonderful thing that came from the situation, because they have had no part of her life. So there's been no closure or healing available to them because their whole life plan got derailed and then nothing good came of it in their eyes.
Mm-hmm. By this point, or starting around this point, Lorelai makes the very smart and very motherly move to send Rory out of the room. Protect Rory, because this, whatever's about to go down, is not at all about her. Send her out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Haydens, they are still living with this old narrative of Lorelai the seductress,
oh my God.
that she manipulated and seduced our darling son. They live with that thought every day, and that
he was going to Princeton and our family legacy is over because of this witch. Like, he would literally, if it had been 400 years prior, he would have been like a witch hunt guy.
Oh, totally.
Like,
Totally.
Like, he would have been some creepy pastor or, like, who was just sending any type of woman, some sort of succubus woman to,
Mhm.
like, to the stake,
Mhm.
to the pyre to be burned. Like, it's awful. Like, I'm sorry, there were 2 people, and Richard says that. He's like, "A mutual mistake." He's trying to stay calm at this point. He's like, "A mutual mistake was made years ago. Like, can we please move on?" And
Like
Francine is trying.
even Richard and Emily have never, I don't think, put all the onus on Lorelai for like
Never,
making it
as far
happen
as I
between
know.
them. Like they've, yeah, I if it ever happened, and then they've changed their tune since then. But they've
Yeah.
never.
No. They blame her for not marrying Christopher, and they blame her for running
Yes.
away and, like, all of that stuff, but the actual getting pregnant, I'm sorry, she did not do that by herself. There was no
No.
turkey baster situation happening with Lorelai Gilmore. Like,
Jesus.
sorry. We can cut that out if it's too much. Yeah,
Crossing my
no.
legs now.
Yeah, but Christopher was there, like an equal part. So Strobe is referring to Rory as that girl at this point. He's like, I don't care how smart that girl is. Like, she's not even a human being. It's horrible because all he cares about is his legacy and how his legacy has been destroyed because of the situation. Well, you know what? You could have had an amazing life with your grandchild instead of your legacy. You could have had somebody to be proud of, to get to watch grow up. Like,
Well, she can
awful.
be part of his legacy. And like, and if
Yeah.
he actually did know what she was like, if he even bothered to find out, then he would be so proud of her. Just
Yeah.
as much as Emily and Richard are. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Francine is trying to get everybody to stop to diffuse, being like, Strobe, please, I'm getting a headache. Like, let's just all stop. And Christopher says, like, let's be civil. And Richard, like, tries to echo the call for civility. Like, everybody's trying to diffuse. And Strobe is not having it. He's just drilling. And then he asks Lorelai, like, what became of you anyway, basically. And she says, I run the inn. And that might have been earlier, but then he like attacks her on that, saying, like, I wouldn't take such a haughty tone when saying you work at a hotel. He's just completely like tearing down anything and everything to do with that, regardless of whether it's valid or not. But, you know, to very wealthy people, working at a hotel is like a service job. So it's frowned upon anyway. And for the record, that's being a snob, not a money nose.
Oh,
Whatever a
oh.
money nose is. Snob. Um, and this is where Richard gets furious.
Yeah.
He physically grabs Strobe and is like shaking him and yelling in his face, like, don't you dare, you know, attack like a Gilmore. Like, don't you dare say something like that about my daughter. She's so good at what she does. But at this point, you know that he's not talking about Lorelai. He does not care that it's Lorelai and her work. He's never been interested in her work. He doesn't know if she's good at her job. Like, it's not about Lorelai at this point for Richard at all. It's just pride, and they're being attacked and they're being insulted, and it's Richard's ego that's being bruised right now. He's not trying to stand up for Lorelai.
It's a very impressive display, and going with the look on Lorelai's face, I put myself in Lorelai's position and like, wow, oh my gosh, someone defending me like this is just my father defending me. Like this is so alarming and eye-opening and surprising and wonderful. Like what? It's
Yeah,
a
because we know that
huge,
she
huge
feels like a disappointment
yes.
to them. So this
Yeah.
must be like, oh my God.
She's hearing some words that she would love to hear even once, more often.
Strobe is basically like, I'm leaving. And Richard says, no, I'm kicking you out.
That's that classic line. You're not leaving, I'm kicking you out.
So the night kind of implodes.
That scene wraps up with everyone exit all except for Lorelai and Christopher, who are standing looking like two little children who've been told off and punished, standing linked arm in arm, holding hands. And Lorelai says, I feel 16. It's possibly the same scene that played out then, like when they found out that she was pregnant. You know, it's probably exactly the same. And they were left there together holding hands in the living room, right? Gosh.
Yeah. So Emily's attempt at a big happy family was a bust. And Lorelai follows Richard to his study and she thanks him for standing up for her. And she said, that was really great. And I really appreciate you doing that for me. And Richard just tears into her. He's like, why do you think I did it? It wasn't for you. Like, it was for the Gilmore name. My family was being attacked, and I needed to defend our honor and our family. It wasn't for you. Like, his old wounds are all opened up now. And he tells her, like, just because you're here doesn't mean everything's fine. You put us through the ringer. You hurt us so badly, and your mother couldn't get out of bed for a month. And I had to tell all of my coworkers and my friends that, my daughter was pregnant and ran away. Like,
That's
they're
it. See,
still
I didn't know until this scene what exactly went down. If they kicked her out or if she sort of left and they agreed upon that. But no, we finally find out that she ran away. 16, pregnant, single, she ran away. And this scene is so hard to watch, but it's so well done. So well written and extremely well performed, specifically by Richard's actor, whose name I've forgotten.
Ed Herman.
Ed Herman. Just remembering.
Bella!
Oh no! Oh no!
Bella!
See this special blooper cut for that one. Anyway, that we see his complex, this whole complex of feelings that he has about it, and we learn just how painful it's been for them. Because for all their, their pomp and formality and everything, this is still a father and daughter, parents and a daughter who have been hurt. And he was a father who was frightened for his daughter. It hurts. It's painful. These memories are all coming back, and it's all of this pain and anger that comes with loving somebody and caring about their safety, that you want to be really angry with him and just hate him for how he spun that around and was like, oh, did you mean nothing? Like, you've just built her up and and said all these things that we've wanted to hear him say. But then he says, well, a member of my family was being, attacked. And, it all comes down to family and stuff. But, like, it does. And, like, he'd feel hurt like that. Absolutely. He's not just going to spin around and say, well, you're back in our lives now and everything's wonderful. Like, I think he has absolutely every reason to be as angry and frightened. Because this is all coming out just like anger. But he's hurt. He loves her. And he's, of course, angry and embarrassed for stuff that has never been able to heal properly. I don't know if Lorelai was really expecting that, like, oh, well, things are better now and he's fully turned around. I don't think she was realistically expecting that. I think she was hoping. But I suppose his whole monologue comes to the point of saying what's the right thing to do. So what was the right
Lorelai
thing to do?
Says, well, if you love Christopher so much, like, why don't he just be your son or something like that? Like, and he's like, oh, Lorelai, don't be a martyr. But, Christopher wanted to marry you. He wanted to do the right thing. And that's what's important to him, is doing the right thing. And Lorelai's just like, but what about what I wanted? He was like, doesn't matter. Basically, he doesn't say what you want doesn't matter, but he said there's a right way to do things. He reiterated that there's a right way to do things. And Lorelai, to her credit in this scene, doesn't tell him that she thinks he's wrong or doesn't get offended, or she doesn't lash out being like, what I do, what I think does matter. She doesn't fight him on it. She just says, I feel really sad for you.
Yeah. Because I think because she can see.
I interpreted her saying that I feel sad for you in meaning that he's been living a life of putting his own feelings aside for what is right rather than what he actually wants, and expecting people to put aside what they want from life just because there's a certain way to do things. And that's how I understood her to mean, I'm sad for you for the things you're missing out on because of these ideals that you're carrying that don't actually serve you to the best of your ability. Meanwhile, Emily has gone to find Rory in the kitchen. And she starts off by trying to keep up appearances a little bit by talking about, oh, that what an eventful evening. And, Strobe is actually a very good man. And then starts listing all of these wonderful things, these accolades of his. Like, he's an excellent lawyer and he's always kept up his charity work, even though he's retired. And then we get this doozy from Emily.
Oh, let's face it. He's a big ass.
I just needed that soundbite. I needed it so badly.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've never heard Emily say anything like that before, and she's trying so hard to maintain the like propriety of talking about other people and not like she has no problem saying terrible things about people from Stars Hollow. But when it comes to somebody who's literally insulted her whole family in her living room, he's a good man. He's a good man. Like it is awful and infuriating.
She must know so many impressive but awful people because, yeah, people who have horrific worldviews and horrific views of humanity and rights and whatever, they can still do grand gestures of charity and support and but when they're sitting in your living room attacking your family, they're an ass. Absolutely.
That's it. Being a top lawyer and donating to charity does not make you a good person. It means you're a good lawyer and you have money. That does not make you a good person.
Precisely. Yeah.
And from here, we see this very maternal and motherly side of Emily that we have never seen before. And I've got this clip here of that. And I have some things to say about this.
I know you heard a lot of talk about various disappointments this evening. And I know you've heard a lot of talk about it in the past. But I want to make this very clear. You, young lady, your person and your existence have never ever been, not even for a second, included in that list. Do you understand me?
Yeah, I do.
She's being so motherly and tender and soft and casual. Like she comes and she like plates up some food for Rory. It's just like from
leftovers.
Yeah.
Used food.
Right. And she's just being so approachable and thoughtful and kind. And it hurts to watch because that's not the mother that Lorelai gets. And in talking to my friends who have children about some experiences that we've witnessed or had ourselves, that often happens with grandparents and their grandchildren, where the parent is looking at the grandma like, where was this mother when I was growing up? Mm-hmm. You're so kind and you're so gentle and you're such a sweet mom. And that's not the mom I got. Mm-hmm. Who is this person? Where did she come from? And I think a huge part of it is they have the time to regroup, to relax. They can like be themselves and they're not constantly having to like be the parent all the time, because the parents are always at the end of their rope. They're always so tired and they don't get a chance to bounce back from a situation because they're always having to move through the situations, right? And so they're just trying to survive, and the child is their responsibility. So a lot more of the weight of them not listening, if they're, just, putting their feet up on the table. The grandparent can be like, oh, honey, put your feet down. But the parent has told them 1,000 times every day for the last year to put their feet down from the table, So like the mom doesn't have a chance to really like step back and like, okay, well, the feet on the table is not that big of a deal. A grandmother can be like, silly, put your feet down, because they don't have to deal with it every single day, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to watch your mom be the mom you didn't have to your child. It is excruciating. Mm-hmm. So I hear.
Well, it's also it's a chance. It's a second chance for her. Again, Emily is getting a second chance to be mom-like, do it a better way. And you're right, she has that kind of distance and that kind of. I do obviously on the surface love that we do get this scene.
Yes, it's amazing.
It's so important for Rory to know this, that she's not part of the drama, and that no one has regrets about her. None of that is directed to her. She is a product of this. She is not involved. Because I don't know who else would have actually said that in this episode. Christopher certainly would not have thought about it. Lorelai could have, but why do we put everything on Lorelai? We
Yeah.
can't just imagine doing that. So I'm really glad that Emily does.
And
even
I'm glad that it
though
actually came from her
yes,
because Lorelai, I'm sure, has said it a million times, but Rory
probably,
hasn't heard
yeah.
it from her grandparents, where it's also their lives and their plans that got derailed. It's not just Lorelai's, right? And they're the ones that had bigger expectations for their lives than Lorelai did.
Mhm.
So hearing it from them, I think, carries even more weight because, like, your mom has to love you. She has to say these kinds of things. Of course, she doesn't regret having you, you know? But then having Emily say it is really impactful.
I like that we also get this in the same episode as Rory's high grandma's being unheard. You know, she said it twice, and we haven't heard it, but we still get this. So it's not like Emily is ignoring her. I don't think that was
Yeah.
intentional. I don't think she's doing that. And I think since the very beginning, Emily's concern is Rory's future, Rory's reputation. It doesn't always shake out to be as kind and nice and accessible and free as we'd hope it would be, but her concern is Rory, and that's so it's heartbreaking for exactly the reasons you pointed out, but it's also no, I don't actually know what the right word is. Well, it's an evolution. Emily's behavior and Emily's openness to Rory is all coming from this point of concern. But look at her evolution from the birthday parties to now. So like the birthday party, the leftovers, even
the pudding.
and
Let's not forget the pudding.
Oh, of course, yes, yeah, the pudding. So now here she is, in the kitchen, so informal with the Tupperware boxes, telling Rory something that's extremely important, that is true, and is extremely important, and is supporting. It also kind of makes sense of the previous episode of Emily being so concerned with who Lorelai marries. Not just because of the reputation of the family and how will that affect the family and blah blah blah, but it matters because who is going to be the father figure for Rory? She's also concerned about Rory. I still think she handled it really poorly, and I don't like how Emily was at the end of that last episode. But still, it's all coming from this place of concern.
And I think it also chalks up to appearances as well, because if they actually knew Christopher, then they would know that he is not a suitable father figure for Rory at all,
That's it,
right?
yeah.
And so it is
Yeah.
about appearances because he does come from a rich family, whereas Luke is a suitable father figure for Rory, but he's not rich and he's not, fancy. So he's unsuitable. So I still think it's from, like you're saying, like she's thinking about Rory's best interests, but not what her actual best interests are. It's like what she believes is the best thing based on her extremely wackadoo priorities. So Lorelai at this point has fled to her room. She's on the balcony, which incredible. Imagine having a balcony like that off your bedroom window. Like it would be like reading out there, and it would just be like Rapunzel fantasies, like Romeo and Juliet. Like,
incredible. Like ivy on the walls and everything, just stunning.
And then Christopher follows her out. He says the balcony is still the same. And she says, yeah, in all its beautiful away from themness, which is an excellent line. I really liked that. Christopher's really trying hard to reminisce and to make this like a nostalgic moment. They pull out a bottle of tequila that it's been in his jacket. And so at this point, she's had at least 2 martinis, and now they're sipping the José Cuervo. And they start reminiscing about the different things that they did on that balcony, like looking for aliens and using the telescope to look for naked neighbors. And then he says the worst line ever. He says Rory's initial emanation. And when you emanate, it means it's like, ugh, disgusting. I first thought he said lamination. And I was like, I don't understand this reference. What do you mean, Rory's initial lamination? I knew what he was trying to get at based on the way that he was, he was trying to say this is where Rory was conceived. Great. But Rory's initial emanation, who wrote that? It was so gross. It just makes me ew. So yeah, I had to Google it because I didn't understand. And then I came across many subreddits of people just destroying that line because it's awful.
Rightly so.
And gross. Yes.
He almost makes up for it by they exchange the sip of the drink by saying, "Here's to Rory, a bright spot in all these dark days." Okay.
Yes.
Do that
And
instead.
they're getting a little bit cozy, and we're like, uh-oh, this feels vulnerable and probably not great. And then it cuts quickly to Luke standing alone in front of the diner, all ready to paint. And then we're like, oh my god, it's Friday night.
Oh my
She
god,
said
it's
she was
Friday
gonna go-
night.
Yeah. They deliberately did not remind anybody that she was going to be painting at Friday night dinner or after Friday night dinner. And he's there and he's waiting and she's not showing up. And it's so sad. And he's so upset and he like slams the door. He's been waiting probably for ages. But like, why don't you call her? Why don't you remind her earlier in the day, hey, you still coming over to paint?
Yeah.
Like, who makes plans a week prior and then does no follow-up? Especially with somebody like Lorelai, who is like brains out to lunch 90% of the time. But for television drama, Luke is left ditched, abandoned, forlorn at the diner with nary a paintbrush, and cuts back to the balcony where Christopher and Lorelai are kissing. And I wrote in my notes because at this point I was tired and cranky about the line. I wrote, while Lorelai and Christopher get to emanating again. Gross. I keep saying really terrible things.
Something that distracted me the second time I watched through this episode was one of the shots of Christopher joining her on the balcony. We can see through the glass doors and windows into her bedroom, and there's this like face of a man who, from a distance, it looks like, is that a sound guy? Is that like one of the tech guys sort of like in the background? It's not. It's definitely like a poster of a boy band that's on the wall of her bedroom, but he's so like perfectly framed, like just about dead center.
Amazing.
Really funny. But and I'm not gonna dwell on this bit either too much, but I really when we meet Lorelai on the balcony, the thought came to my mind, like, someone really ought to apologize to her. She has been the target of so much ferocity this evening, and she doesn't get apologized to at any point in this whole episode. She's just bearing the brunt of it all, and like, ugh.
She is the punching bag for everybody's broken dreams. It sucks for her a lot because, again, it takes two people to make a baby, and Christopher does not get the same amount of animosity about the situation that Lorelai does by any means. And like, so what? So if they would get married and then it doesn't work out and Christopher leaves, it also would have been Lorelai's fault. You know, like no matter what happens, all of it would have been Lorelai's fault. Christopher could do no wrong. So it's infuriating. We cut to the next scene. So they're kissing, and then all of a sudden they're putting all their clothes back on. So we know what happened. And then Lorelai is like full on flipping out. A little bit too late for that. You don't just like get to finish and then freak out. Like, where was that literally at any point before this? Because I feel like it went from like 0 to 60, and then she just like snapped out of it. But girl, you don't just get to play the whoops card after it's over.
I guess there was a lot more in that smile than we anticipated.
Oh my god. A lot of history, a lot of that. Lorelai's freaking out. They all go home. They're in the car, and Rory's like, "Where were you guys?" And they're both just like, "What? Nowhere, nothing. What are you talking about?" And Rory
instantly, they're so childish.
Yep.
Like, no,
nowhere.
Nothing, we were nowhere.
And Rory's like, "Okay," but like a little too knowingly. Like, I wouldn't assume that my parents were off like doing something, because then at the next scene, she does seem a bit confused again about where they are, because she's like picking something off of like Lorelai's face or whatever. Like, where were you? But she seems like very knowing, when I don't actually think she does know. She can't possibly. I don't think the first thing that would come to her head was like, my parents were off having sex on the balcony. Like, I don't think that is where her brain would go. And then so Lorelai now that they're home, Christopher goes off. Lorelai and Rory are in the kitchen, and she finally gets a chance to talk to her about the night. She's like, "We haven't had a chance to talk yet. Like, that was kind of crazy. Like, how are you feeling about it?" And this part kind of makes me sad for Rory, but also annoyed about what Lorelai has to say. Here we go.
They don't even want to know me, do they?
That is not true. They are just so full of anger and stupid pride that stands in the way of them realizing how much they want to know you.
That just feels like kind of like a disingenuous thing to say. Like, because they don't want to know her. And it's not like they're just suddenly being prideful and it'll pass. Like, that's just who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like she's like placating her a bit too much. Like, she's not stupid. She was there. She knows that, like, if they wanted to know her, they would have reached out in the last 16 years.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think half of that line was good. The part about they're so full of anger and stupid pride that that they're blind to this. They can't see past it. Yeah. But they don't want to get to know her. They want nothing to do with it.
No, that's it. And yeah, the fact that she goes like, that it makes them so blind that they don't know that they want to get to know you.
Yeah.
That's the part that kind of bothers me, because it's like, I'm thinking about, if like somebody is like really bad at soccer and they're on their soccer team and they're the worst on their team, and they're like, "Man, like I'm the worst on my team." And you're like, "No, you're not." No. Like, it felt a little bit like that, where the person's like, "No, I know I'm the worst on my team." Like, they don't really want to get to know her, and she knows that. And I feel like Lorelai is trying to protect her from the hard feelings of that, but isn't actually giving her the proper tools to deal with it instead.
Well, and even just think about how Richard was in that going golfing episode. Lorelai's own father, he didn't really care to get to know Rory. He just wanted to know that she went to a good school. So it's fully expected that people who have had no interaction with her whatsoever would have no interest in wanting to get to know her. So I agree. It's a bit placating. Is that the word you used?
Yeah.
That's it.
So up they all toddle off to bed, and Lorelai wakes up the next morning like remembering Luke. She freaks out, runs off to the diner, is there before he gets there, and is super apologetic. She's there in her I Love Lucy pajamas and a jacket, and she has this to say.
I feel horrible.
Don't.
I stood you up. I didn't even call.
It's okay.
I'm a rat. We had a date and I stood you up.
It wasn't a date. It was just a pain.
I'm a rat. I need cheese.
Forget it.
I just like that she says, "I need cheese." She's like fully leaning into the rat thing. Like, I'm a rat biologically now. Like, and he's not having it. He's not interested in her apology because he assumes it's because of Christopher, rightly so. And he tries to ask her if it was an emergency, and she starts to make up this lie. And she's like, "No, there was no emergency. I'm just a
lie
rat."
to him. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, she can't lie to him. He gets it. And I like that he is suitably hurt, but he's not awful to her. See, he doesn't know the details, and he doesn't have to know the details to be able to be like, "Okay, like I get it. There's a lot happening here. Like, you let me down. This is all I need. This is all I know, but there's problems."
Yeah.
He doesn't make it even worse for her.
Yeah, he doesn't turn it
Worse
into a big
than
thing,
enough.
but he also doesn't really accept her apology either.
Oh, no.
He just goes about his work day. He's just like, "I'm late," and leaves and closes the door in her face. He's just like, yeah, man of few words. He's not going to make a big stink about it, but he's also not impressed. And I think at this point, he's thinking that he was seeing more into the situation than it was. And now he's just confused. And he's like just distancing himself because he's hurt on like a few different levels. It's not just about the painting, obviously. And he was expecting something from the night, and instead he was stood up for another man.
Yeah, because he has put himself out there for it. It's taken him so long, and we're starting to get somewhere where he's actually smiling with her, and like he's so I don't want to say fragile. He's so tender and vulnerable, only to be let down like this right when you're at your most vulnerable.
So Lorelai goes home. Christopher offers her some coffee, and she says no. And he is like taken aback. He's like, okay, I know all is not right in Whoville if you say no to coffee. Like, what's wrong? And she says that like she disappointed a friend, and they start to talk about what a disaster the previous night was. And Lorelai starts talking about what a disaster their night was. And Christopher is trying to like play it off, play it cool, like, oh, you can't say it like that. Like, and he's trying to make it seem like it was this like awesome thing when Lorelai is obviously not comfortable with what happened. And so she just keeps saying how like it was stupid and it's not gonna happen again. And like, what were we thinking? And this is the worst. And then she's still very upset about the Luke thing. So she says this.
Stood up a friend of mine who was counting on me, and he just stood there looking hurt with the paint and the chairs, and it hurt me, and it's not your fault, but in this parade of stupid and dumb, I am the one twirling the flaming baton.
Poor Lorelai. It's just so hard. And everything in the last like 12, 13, 14 hours has just been like Lorelai making mistakes or having her mistakes thrown back in her face and being solely responsible for every bad thing happening in her life right now. And haven't we all been there where you're just like, oh, I can't stop doing things like this?
The lighting in this scene in the kitchen. So they're in the kitchen. The lighting is everything is so bright. And I get this impression that it's deliberately stark and clear and bright and like everything is visible. And this is all of the truth come to light. So obviously when they're on the balcony, it was nighttime. There are no lights on them, just light coming from her bedroom through the window. It's, you can hide your desires and hide things in the dark and it's all, but now everything is on display. Everything is visible and there should be this clarity, right? It is
clarity. Exactly.
Yeah. Vivid and bright. His feelings about the time on the balcony, you can tell that he is, as much as he says that he wants to be, there for Rory, and do all this for Rory, he's still only thinking about himself and Lorelai. And that them getting together on the balcony is an indication that like, oh, maybe they can get back together again. Maybe they act because the feelings are still there. They're still there under the surface. Like we can be there. Like they don't hate each other. We can make this happen. And he's only thinking of the two of them. But obviously Lorelai can think of the implications and how that would affect Rory.
Because then Christopher comes out and says this immediately following Lorelai's like, I'm a punching bag, like twirling the flaming baton meltdown.
Laura?
What?
I want to marry you.
And the hits just keep on coming.
Her delivery of that line is brilliant.
Yeah, it was so good. The way that she's just like shocked and then like, are you kidding me right now? Like, no, like, what are you thinking? And she's freaking out and she says that he's being crazy and that I love that she says Charles Manson would be freaked out by you right now. Like the freakiest guy in Western history would be afraid of you right now. Like Christopher just tries to like build his case. Like I can be a family man. I'm stable. And Lorelai calls him out and he's about the book and not being able to pay for the book. She's like, financially stable? You can't even buy a book, Christopher. Like, stop this. And he goes on to say, like, I can't believe Rory ratted me out. Excuse me? Should be no such thing as a child ratting out your parent. Like, so again, he's showing his immaturity and his lack of understanding of how like a proper family should function. And there should be no secret keeping. And Lorelai's like, actually, no, she didn't. Andrew called, and then this guy called, and then the UPS guy called, and then Rory didn't even want to tell me when I asked her about it. Like, she was still trying to keep the secret that you asked her to keep from me? I don't think so. Like, everything, his actions are directly contradicting everything that he is saying that he's ready for. And then he says something like, hey, I'm as mature as you, which is like a weird point to bring up in an argument anyway about any of this. Like, I'm mature. Look, if you have to say it to prove it, you're not. Just
Exactly. Mhm.
And then this is where it gets really weird. Lorelai, instead of again pointing out all of the ways that he is not mature, she just says, "Are you kidding me? Your favorite band is The Offspring." And then they get into, like you said earlier, this like whole side debate about Metallica versus Offspring versus whatever. And how did we get like why are we arguing about this? This is not the point.
Mhm. They're right back to being 16 again. And this is
Mhm.
probably an argument they've had, or they had many times when they were 16, talking about which band is better and what that means about you and me and our personalities and blah 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 blah. Like they're 16 again. And I tried to Christopher's declaration of wanting to marry her could have seemed to come out of nowhere because he hasn't mentioned it at all. Like even since the beginning, he hasn't talked about marriage. But I feel like he probably has wanted to marry her the whole way through. Like wouldn't be upset about it. But I think it was the horrific Friday night and everything that went down there, having their parents there, putting him right back into that position again of being 16 and everything that went down then and thinking of what is the right thing to do. It's the Richard Gilmore, obsession of like the right thing to do. And Christopher believes that the right fix, the solution is to get married. And I think he thinks he's fixing things. If they get married, they can fix it again. But obviously, Lorelai, who knows better and who knows herself better and who is a lot more open to nuance and possibilities and circumstances, knows that it's not the fix.
I don't know. I don't think he necessarily thinks it's like the right thing to do in terms of them, but I think as we find out that he's like failing in other areas of his life, I think that he's trying to just fix his own life and how
Oh yeah.
everything went south once Lorelai said she wasn't going to marry him. So the obvious thing is that she has to marry him for his life to get back on track because everything since then has been a gong show. And I don't think he's thinking past like the end of his nose when it comes to his reasons for wanting to marry Lorelai. I think he's floundering and she's a little bit like his manic pixie dream girl where she's going to fix all of his personal problems because she's
Mhm.
Lorelai. He has a couple like really awkward things to say. So at one point he asks her like point blank, "What did having sex mean to you?" And that just he would say, "What did last night mean to you?" Just the way that he says, "What did having sex mean to you?" Like feels very almost as though he like planned for that to happen so that he could plant that seed. Like it felt, I don't know, it was weird and I just didn't like it and it didn't feel like a genuine, authentic thing that somebody would say, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
I'm actually glad you brought that line up because I'd forgotten about it. But I was dwelling on that as well, and I haven't actually come to an explanation of it exactly. But I think there's going to be something in there that's like what is sex for men versus sex for women? What are the implications there? What is this? That for him it obviously means something else that they
Yeah.
did this. But also like sex also happened when they were 16. Sex was the thing that brought about the pregnancy, which brought about all the because for him, sex isn't a big deal. Doesn't matter. He can go around and do whatever. But obviously, for a 16-year-old Lorelai, it means the end of her life as she knew it, and the start of something totally different. And then, yeah, doing it again. Does it mean that they are together? They're a couple? They can be a couple again? Is it an indication of that? I don't know. What does sex mean? What does any sex mean to Lorelai these days? I don't know. But yeah, I haven't concluded anything. Let
Yeah,
us
I'm
know.
sure Lorelai's just like, we'd been drinking, people had been fighting, I was sad we had sex. Like that's just what it was. It
Yeah.
didn't mean anything because you're still Christopher and I'm still Lorelai and it's still not ever going to work. It was stupid. And she'd made it very
Mhm.
clear at this point it was stupid and a mistake. So for him to be like, "What did having sex mean to you?" And she's like, "I told you. It was stupid. It
Mhm.
didn't mean anything. Like I've made myself very clear on this." So for him to like drive it home, it's almost like he's trying to, yeah, kind of like you said, how sex can sometimes mean something different for men and for women. Like he's almost trying to like create this semblance of meaningfulness where there is none because sometimes there is more sentiment attached to it. And
Yeah.
so she's like, "I already told you there's nothing. I did not want to do that. It was dumb and I regret it." Like, and Lorelai's like, "We don't even know each other as adults because they don't." And Christopher says, let's get married and then get to know each other. In what universe is that the answer? Absolutely not. Like, you'd expect him to say, okay, let's get to know each other and then consider getting married. Like, let's start
Yeah.
from scratch. Let's go on a date. Like, that's what you say at that point. Let's get to know each other. Not, let's get married and then get to know each other. Like, what is he trying to do? Exactly. Like, what are his motivations? He's just adrift and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And he's just like clinging to his like last bastion of something good. And then he says, okay, like, let's just start right now. Ask me anything. Lorelai, straight for the jugular. How's your business really doing? And he kind of like starts to laugh it off. And she's like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. Because he doesn't want to say. And if he's not saying, it's because it's not good. And so Lorelai's like, you are a liar. Like, you sat there all last night and let them praise you. And they were just completely gushing over your success. And it's nothing. And they were tearing me apart. And you just sat there and
I think he even says like, oh yeah, I know I'm a loser. And she says, no, you're not a loser. You're a liar. Which is so much better because, yeah, a loser means, you know, oh, all these things have happened to me that, like, I'm the victim. I'm the sucky loser.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Take some responsibility for it. You are a liar. Oof.
And
such a good line.
Then he does two more things. He says two more things. I hate everything that he says in this whole scene. So he goes, Rory might be my only child. Like, that's not Lorelai's responsibility. Who cares? Like, if you want to go out and have another child, go out and have another child with somebody else.
Yeah.
Marrying Lorelai does not have anything to do with the fact that you may not have any other children.
Yeah.
It's not her problem.
Exactly. Not her problem.
Not her problem. And then he does this really manipulative thing where he goes, oh, I just miss Rory so much. You know, I don't realize, I think it's easier to stay away. And that feels like an invitation to be like, no, don't go. Don't stay away. We need you, Christopher. Like, that's the reaction, the response that he wanted from that. And that's what he got. And Lorelai's like, no, you don't need to stay away. Just be there for Rory. That's what your job is to be there for Rory. And it was so gross and manipulative. And it really bothered me that he said that, like, it's easier to stay away.
That's this total immaturity coming out.
Yep.
And it's really, it's tough to be our age because we are the same age. Well, we are near enough that Lorelai's age, to be this age and be met with the immaturity of someone half our age. Which he still definitely has. And it's infuriating. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you have to be a little bit tender to it, to like, when it comes to people who are that immature and that age, right? So Rory could totally be the one being like, maybe you guys can get back together. Maybe, because Rory in the next scene mentions, you know, maybe you guys will get married, or why don't you? Or fair. Yeah, she's young, naive, and hopeful, and these are her parents. She wants to get back together.
So ultimately Lorelai's just like, no, stop, like that's it. And it cuts to the next scene that you just brought up where Christopher is leaving. So Rory is saying goodbye, and Christopher like whispers something in her ear, and she goes to ask Lorelai. So she's like, he wants to know if you'll reconsider, and then she brings back the like Metallica is better than the Offspring thing, and then off Christopher goes into the darkness, into the dusk. And
dusk again, just a point about lighting. The lighting here, it feels like it's the early morning. Brilliant. And the light
it's dawn
through the trees.
It's morning?
Yeah. It's the same morning. So because Lorelai ran out like pre-dawn, or like just about dawn, in her pajamas and met Luke before he opened up the diner, right? And I think he's leaving straight away. Well, if it's not dawn, then it's dusk, but it's...
Yeah, to me, it looked like the sun was starting to set. Like, it looked like it was evening at this point, because maybe he had to, like, pack up his stuff and say bye. And because by the time she was at the diner, it was already light out.
I feel like he did that immediately. Immediately after she's like, I'm not going to marry you. I feel like he just packed it all up and left. At any rate, the lighting here is brilliant and, like, misty and beautiful, and there's this, like, orangey pink coral tinge going on, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I get the imagery, and I get the point of Rory being whispered into one ear and she brings it back and forth, that like they're still so Like there's still that immaturity there between them of like, pass along this to your mom and like, so-and-so says blah blah blah, so-and-so says blah blah. Like, don't put her between you. Don't
Right?
put your
It was
daughter.
uncomfortable. And so she seems to know that like he wanted to marry you, didn't he? And poor Lorelai has to explain to Rory all the reasons that she does not want to marry her dad when Rory just keeps like pushing and pushing, but like it could work and he loves you and don't you love him? And she just won't let it go, which I feel like the child of every divorced, separated parent has that conversation with their parents, and it's normal and natural, but it just sucks that Lorelai has to explain to literally everybody on the planet why she doesn't want to be with Christopher. Her parents, Christopher, Rory, like everybody. And nobody seems to be seeing or respecting her point at all. And it's hard. And eventually Rory does kind of let it go because Lorelai's like, listen, you have to trust me on this. Like, he's not ready. This wouldn't be good. And I love that she says, I have my own needs that need to be met.
Yes, that's huge, especially for
that was a spectacular line.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then from here, we cut to Luke's diner one more time. And he comes inside, and Lorelai has been in there painting, ostensibly all night. That's another reason I think it's nighttime, because I think she leaves from there to go to the diner to paint it. And at first, Luke is pissed. He's like, "How did you get in? I have to switch bread, guys." Lorelai is just like, she's painted the whole diner. It looks great. She's so pleased and happy and apologetic. And Luke kind of concedes. He's like, yeah, it looks good. Like, you did a good job. And he asks where the guy is. And she says that he's gone. But Luke still isn't overly chummy with her. Lorelai is trying to act as though everything is normal between them, basically, and goes right back to like, okay, so how about curtains? He's like, nope, absolutely not. There's no such thing as manly curtains. Get out. Like, that's enough.
When
So
she explained last episode how giddy and how much joy she gets from painting, and it is on full display here. She has had such a good time. Like, she's like laughing through what she's saying, and you just mentioned that that line about her needs being met, and I think this is one of her needs, is to repair and take care of the friendships and relationships that she has. And one of them is to fix some of the troubles that she's found herself in.
Yeah. And I think it's to not be so like embroiled in drama all the time that her relationships suffer. So I think having somebody like Christopher around would always be dramatic, and it would pull her away from her friendships rather than amplify and add to the relationships and complement the relationships. It would create more divides than it would build upon, I guess. So that's the episode. Lorelai suggests curtains and Luke says no, and that's a wrap. So that's us for this week.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah, Christopher is out of the picture once again. Yes. And yeah. And back to the status quo, I suppose. Back to Stars Hollow. A peaceful Stars Hollow awaiting the next excitement, I guess. Yes.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I know.
Well, that's been us. You know, I don't know. Yes, that's been us. So, she's been Lisa. I've been Jenny. We have been the Belladonna Watch Club. Thanks so much for joining us week after week. Catch us next week, next Thursday, here on YouTube or wherever you stream your podcast. Do leave us a comment. Let us know how you're feeling about the show and this episode. Let us know your thoughts. We love reading them. Give us a like anywhere you can, and be sure to follow us wherever you can. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
Yeah. See you later. Bye.
Bye.